Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about place value and patterns. Our objective for this lesson, or our goal for this lesson, is that you all recognize the 10-to-1 relationship among place value positions. So let's start off by thinking about a number. This number, when you're looking at it, it's easy to just look at it and see an 8, 0, 0, and a 3. However, when we're talking about place value and when we're talking about any number in general, I want you guys to make sure that you're thinking of the place value of each of these numbers. So if I were to put this number into a place value chart like it is here, you would see that there's actually 3 ones. There aren't any tens in the tens place, and there aren't any hundreds in the hundreds place, but there are 8 thousands in the thousands place. Another thing that I want you to think about in place value is how we can represent that in a concrete way. So when I'm talking about concrete, I'm talking about it's something that we can see and something we can touch, so numbers that we can visualize. So if you look right here, if I have 3 ones, that would mean there would be 3 units. 3 units. And if there are 8 thousands, that means there would be 8 cubes. And that would be what would make the number 8,003. It's not just an 8, a 0, 0, and a 3. It's 8,003. All right, so when we're talking about base 10 blocks, if we're looking at base 10 blocks and how they affect the place value chart, I want you guys to be thinking first of all about the ones place. So like I said, the unit cube is what we are showing, the unit is what we're showing the ones place with. And if I am counting how many ones can go in the ones place, I'd be counting right here, and I would start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But then when I get to 10, something happens. When I get to 10, my number gets bumped up from 9 in the ones place to 10 in the tens place. So all of a sudden what has to happen is I have to regroup. If I multiply 10 times 1, so that means I have 10 ones, then that means that I have a 10. So I'm going to regroup my units into a long or a rod. All right, now that applies also to rods being regrouped into something else as well. So if I were to count this, so this would start off at 10, go to 20, 30, 40, and so on and so forth. If I were to get all the way up to 10, if I had 10 tens, or another way I could write it is if I'm multiplying 10 times 10, something interesting happens. It goes from being, oops, that does not look like a 10. I'm sorry. So it goes from being in the tens place to being 100. So that would be in the hundreds place. So 10 times 10 equals 100. So 10 tens means that you would be moving into the hundreds place in your place value chart. We can keep going with this with hundreds. So how many hundreds do I have right here? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. Well, if I'm moving from 900 to 1,000, I'm no longer in the hundreds place. I'm going to be in the thousands place. So I'm going to make my 10 hundreds into 1,000. So 10 times 100 equals 1,000. So I want you guys to be thinking about that when you are working with place value and patterns, and how when you have a certain number of ones, tens, or hundreds, eventually you're going to be regrouping them and moving them into the next place on the place value chart. All right, so let's work with a couple of questions. These are some questions that you might see coming up in the next few days. So right here we have our same place value chart. And if you look right here, here are some sample questions. We're just going to look at this first one for right now. So this says blank, or what, is 10 times as much as 10. So if I go back and I'm looking at my place value chart and I'm asking what is 10 times as much as 10, I can be thinking about the relationship between all of my numbers here. Remember what I did before was I multiplied 1 times 10 and it got me into the tens place. So I'm going to put times 10 right here so I can remember that. 1 times 10 is 10. 10 times 10 is 100. Now how do I get to the thousands place? Well, I do the exact same thing. I multiply times 10. And we can go even a step further than we went before. Would it work if I did multiplied 1,000 times 10 again? Would that be 10,000? Yes, it would be. It would be 10,000. So if you see the pattern here, every time I'm moving up a place value, it's because it is being multiplied by 10. It is 10 times greater here than it was here. Okay, so if I'm looking at what is 10 times as much as 10, I'm going to look at my 10. What is 10 times as much as 10? So I'm going to look at my 10, and I'm going to figure out what is 10 times greater than this number. So if I have a 10 and I want to know what's 10 times greater than that, well, I can look right here. 10 times 10 is 100. So my answer would be 100 is 10 times as much as 10. Let's look at our next problem. What is 1/10 of 100? Now, this is going in the opposite direction. So up here we talked about how if you move, as you move to the left, or as the numbers get bigger, you're moving in multiples of 10. However, what if I want to move from, let's say, 10 over to a 1? Well, if I divide 10 by 10, or if I'm finding 1/10 of 10, it's going to get me 10 because any number divided by itself, so 10 divided by 10 is going to be 1. Now, what if I want to get from 100 and I want to find what 1/10 of 100 is? Well, I would look at my 100 and I'd ask, okay, here's my 100 right here. What is 1/10 of, or if I divide 100 by 10, what would my answer be? Well, hopefully you looked at the place value chart and you saw that 100 divided by 10, or 1/10 of 10, is 10. Lots of 10s there. So my answer would be 10 is 1/10 of 100. Now, we're not always going to be sticking with tens and hundreds. Sometimes you're going to get a different number. So if you're looking at this, it says 300 is 10 times as much as what? So if I look at 300, put 300 in my place value chart right here. Okay, so I have 300, and I'm asking you the question, 300 is 10 times as much as what? So I'm looking at 300, and I want to know what it is 10 times greater than. So if I see 10 times as much as, I can sometimes fill in greater than. 300 is 10 times as much as what? Well, this is where it gets kind of tricky because you have to think about the wording. 300 is 10 times as much as what? The answer, you're going to be looking backwards. You're going to be looking at what if I'm looking at this number, I could say that 300 is 10 times greater than that, basically. 300 is 10 times as much as 30. Because, think about it this way, I can switch it around. I could say 30 is 1/10 of 300. 300 is 10 times as much as 30. So if I were looking at 30 and I were saying, okay, what's 10 times greater than 30? I would move and I would go, okay, 30 times 10 would be 300. All right, so coming up, it is going to be your turn to answer some questions. In your math journal, before you complete your WISC, I would like for you to answer these 4 questions, or after you complete your WISC, I'm sorry, you're going to complete these 4 questions in your math journal. Don't forget to hit turn in, submit assignment, and tell your teacher that you have completed your assignment on Emoto. Have a good night.